Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast. The path to greatness is never linear and requires patience and consistency. Join us on our journey as we peel back the layers of success, searching for that elusive core. Each week we will explore a different component of greatness, utilizing experts who have traveled some part of the path that we are all on. We aim to uncover insights into the areas of leadership, coaching, performance, overcoming failure, the power of habits, and so much more. We are all on the edge of greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me a very special guest. It's Chris Zaker, owner of Field of Dreams in Lancaster, Ohio. He is a baseball and softball guy, the catching guru, as you will, here in Columbus, and has had experience with many high school and now on to college level athletes. And we're going to get into some stories and talk about some things that he's experienced over his career working with these athletes and kind of what sets them apart. So Chris, thank you so much for taking time with me today and coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity. And anybody who grew up in the game, and of course, like you, we grew up playing baseball, just being around somebody who enjoys talking the game. If you get a couple of people together and they have a common interest like this, just say the word softball, baseball, obstruction, interference, right? All of a sudden you have a 20-minute conversation. So yeah, I think this is going to be a real easy conversation. I think we have a lot of similar goals, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I agree. So what I want to start off with today is last time we talked, you were on your way down to South Carolina to see your daughter's first collegiate game. So tell me, what was your favorite takeaway from that experience?
I mean, there's so many, she's just a freshman at Ohio University now. So obviously, unless your name is a Montana Fouts, and you happen to go into Alabama and bam, you're number one, and pretty much everybody outside of her has to buy their time. We knew I went into this whole season with very low expectations. If she happens to get on the field, great. Her role this year is to get bigger, stronger, better, faster, and to be able to make the shift from the high school or the 18U travel game up to the Division I collegiate game. And, every time you move up 14U to 16U, 16s to 18s, there's some sort of dramatic shift in the game, whether it's speed or power or intelligence. One of the things that she has mentioned is the biggest change that she's seen is the strike zone. The strike zone is a what I would call a pro hitter strike zone. It's much smaller. You're not getting those big corners. But to get back to that weekend, to see her take the field, to see her name up on the scoreboard and them call her name off, I couldn't help but, people talk about, right before they die, how their entire life flashes before their eyes. And I couldn't help but think back at that moment, 8U, 9U, 10U, the start of travel, going this team. And to see that all lead up to that moment, it was special. And I hope hundreds of thousands of other parents get to experience that because it was amazing.
No, it sounds like you really enjoyed that time and just seeing her get a chance to get out on the field and compete. And that's just a unique experience. And I'm glad you got a chance to go do that for her first game. Cause that's the other thing too. Cause it's so going all the way to South Carolina is not always something you get a chance to do. So that's pretty awesome. That's pretty special.
Yeah, I was, and truth be told, it was kind of a last minute surprise for me. I mean, I wanted to go, but my wife wasn't able to go because she had her vaccination scheduled and she couldn't change that anyway. Long story short, I literally found out like that Friday morning at 10:30 in the morning, a buddy of mine said, "Hey, I'll go with you." And literally 3 hours later, we were in a car headed to the Carolinas. It was so that made it even more special because it was kind of a surprise on me. So anyway, yeah, awesome. it was fantastic. I'm glad I did it. And it's a moment in time I'll never forget.
Love that. Love that. So you mentioned that she's talked about the changing of the strike zone at the next level. So has she mentioned anything else as far as the jump for her moving from the high school and the 18U game to the Division I collegiate level, as far as like, oh, wow, something like kind of stands out in her mind?
Well, and so, yes, we have had several conversations along these lines. If you can think back to, and if you've seen, a 16U team or an 18U team, and I'm talking a high quality team, I'm not going to mention specific organizations because that's not the purpose of this, but you think of a high quality A-level team, and then you think of, okay, the best one or two kids on that team, and then you take the best one or two kids off the other teams in that given tournament, whether it's JO Cup or Scenic City, and you put all them on a team, and that's what you're dealing with. So, it's the all-star team of all-star team of all-star team. So it's, having gone through as a freshman, working your way up through live pitching to her own teams, that's been a challenge for her because, typically most other teams you face, don't get me wrong, it's not like the whole team can't hit, but there's always that kids on the team that's just a little bit better than the rest. But this is everybody. This is the entire lineup, right? You can't pitch around anybody. So right. Yeah, she did mention that the hitters are really, really good. The strike zones are small, and everybody's fast. Yeah. So it's having grown up in the game, seeing 8U rec, 10U travel, 12U travel, and the game continues to get stronger and faster and better and more crisp and more precise. And now to see it at this level, and to see her be comfortable, and I can't really pinpoint the feeling that I had. Of course, pride was there. Fear, you can't help but be afraid, because any one of these kids can hit a missile 38 foot up the middle, and pitchers are sitting ducks. But in terms of the game, just the continuation of the increase in speed, in power, in awareness, and you talk about game IQ, the brain farts that you see that happen at 14U or to some extent even 16U, for the most part that really doesn't happen at this level. These kids, and it's fun to watch. It's just so, you grew up in the game of baseball, right?
Right.
Doesn't baseball seem kind of boring now? Having been around the girls' softball game,
it doesn't seem boring. It does seem slower and
slow. That's what I meant to say. I used the wrong word.
Yeah, but slow. So much bigger. Like, so I'm working with a 13U team, a baseball team now, and we were doing ground balls the other day, and I'm like, they have so long to see this ball get to them, and I'm like,
take 4 steps after they field it.
Yeah, take a breath. Okay, this is normal. I'm trying to hit it hard to get it there faster because I'm used to it, like being on top of people, and I'm like, stop, you're gonna blow somebody up. And it is a different speed, but it's interesting because I love them both, actually. I never thought I would say that as far as like enjoying softball as much as I did when I switched from baseball to softball initially, but there is something about the speed of the game and the fact that they have to react and play at such a quick level that makes it very, very enjoyable and entertaining to watch them kind of grow up learning that process.
Right. I agree 1,000%. It's just, it is so much. I mean, the field is substantially smaller, and some of the, if you look online, of course, you're always going to see some naysayers that say, oh, these girls can only hit at 220. That shouldn't be a home run. Let me see you hit one 350. And like, okay, I totally get that, but I want to see you hit a pitch that starts mid thigh and ends up at your eyes.
Right.
Because, it just as easy as you can say, hey, these girls aren't going to hit the ball 380 feet like maybe a strong high school boy can. Good luck hitting that nasty drop curve or the rise ball or the changeup that's just going to buckle your knees. So there's pros and cons with both. But if there's 4 bases and a pitcher and a bunch of fielders out there, it's worth watching.
And see, part of me actually would love to see them maybe not move the pitcher's mound back, but to expand the size of the field and the bases, because I think sometimes you lose sight of just how athletic these young ladies are and how incredibly gifted they are as athletes, because the field's so small. They're like, oh, well, it's just a step and a dive, where these kids are incredible athletes. They have so much athleticism and ability that I think if you made the field a little bit deeper, the outfield had to run a little bit further, the infield had a little more range to cover ground, it would expose just how incredible these kids are at this sport and how talented they are. And I think it would make the game even more enjoyable from the highlights perspective. Maybe, I mean, again, it slows the game down a little bit from that perspective, but I think also it would make the slapping interesting. It would make the bunting interesting, because you're not on top of each other and you're backing it up, and you have to now you have to move a little bit. So part of me wants to see them, I guess, grow it out a little bit more especially for the college level. Maybe not until college, but I think that would be cool to see.
Like 65-foot bases and maybe 45-foot pitching distance. Yeah, I'm just spitballing.
Just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. And then you have like the slightly bigger outfields. I think they're starting to move some fences back, but I mean, because people say, "Oh, I want to see you hit 300." I don't know about what they've been watching, but I had a girl when we were coached. We were in I think we were in Indiana, and this girl from Iowa took one every bit of 300 over this scoreboard. It landed in some dude's backyard, and I'm like, that was a baseball home run. Like that's literally what I said. I said that ball was crushed.
Some of these girls can literally hit moon shots.
Oh yeah.
And you think, my God, this is an 18-year-old girl. It's a 19-year-old girl. But it is incredible. And I'm sure we'll get into the change in the game over the course of the last decade and where we kind of see it going right now. But yeah, it is. And I don't know if you want to blame the technology or the training or a combination of the two, but yeah, these girls can hit the ball hard. So you take that shot, and I know somewhere there is some physics guru that can actually calculate, the velocity and the angle. We're not going to get into the launch angle, but the velocity and the angle needed in order to hit that shot that far. Now you take that exact same ball and you drop it down to a 0-degree launch angle, hit it straight up the middle, and you have just decapitated a pitcher.
Right.
Because at that speed, because that's well over 80 miles an hour.
Oh yeah.
And the reaction time the pitcher has, she has literally zero chance of getting out of the way of that ball. And something that would go that far would absolutely be devastating to or third baseman or first baseman. And so it's not just a pitcher.
They creep in real close too. I mean, so
well, they have to, right?
You're right.
The slapping game, the bunt game.
But that's where I think if you made the bases a little bit longer and they had to run a little bit further, you could open things up a little bit, and it might be interesting. I don't know. It could ruin it. I mean, every change is always like a coin flip on whether or not it's going to be a good change or a bad change. But part of me wants to see that athleticism, because I think that sometimes we look at these girls and we go, it's just softball and it's close. But if you were to watch them in person, if you were to see them lift weights, if you were to see them hit and do these things and throw, you'd be like, oh, wow, these girls can move. This is some serious athleticism. And that's part of the thing.
They are.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see displayed to the rest of the world. So what I want to get into next here is we're going to tap into your catching background here. I'm curious for what you would think, because I think there's a lot of things that are obviously important in catching, but if you were required to pick just one thing that would make the difference in an elite level catcher, what is that one thing that they do better than everyone else?
Receiving.
And
I had an absolute zero delay as soon as you brought that up. The very first thought, and I talk to my kids all the time, my catching students. There are a lot of things that we as catchers have to do, right? We have to be a psychologist for the pitcher. We have to be what I call an assistant scorekeeper. At any given time throughout the game, if the scorekeeper has lost the count, the catcher should know the count. The catcher should know how many outs there are. The catcher should know the score, because all these things contribute to what they do on any given play. Right. But so we have a psychologist, we have a scorekeeper, we have a coach, because you have to, be aware of this batter and maybe what you did last time so that you can prevent that one mishap. If this batter absolutely drilled a low outside fastball last time, coach might have forgotten it, calls it the next at bat. That's a catcher's responsibility to make sure, hey, coach, do we really want that pitch? This girl just ripped that last time. So now we have a psychologist, we have a scorekeeper, we have a coach. Of course, she's got to be a catcher.
Mhm.
And of course the general in the field. But if you think of all the tasks that a catcher has to do, physical tasks throughout the game, blocking balls in the dirt, throwing runners out, retrieving pass balls, retrieving bunts, picking off runners. What do they do the most? If we purely look at just the numbers, how many times throughout the course of the game will you have to throw out a runner? How many times do you have to block a ball in the dirt? How many times we have to cover a bunt versus how many times do you have to perform the simple act of receiving? And there's been a lot of study in this recently. I think it's Zan Barksdale, who's a nationwide well-respected catching guru. Him, Todd Coburn, the catching guy, Kirsten Cox down in Florida, Dominate the Dish. All these people, like we chat about this stuff, and what the industry is understanding and accepting now is the analysis of how a catcher can contribute to their team and actually quantify that in terms of runs for, runs against, or you could even probably extrapolate it further and look at it how it applies to wins. But you can get a greater impact in terms of runs that you create for your team, either positive for your team or negative for the other team, by first and foremost receiving. Now, in the bottom of the seventh inning with the runner on third base and your team is up 3-2 and the pitcher's starting to get wild, blocking at that moment on that pitch is vital. I agree. But if we take the 55 or 60 games, whatever they play, times however many batters, be able to keep every strike that's supposed to be a strike and to help create those stride balls into the strike zone happens a lot in a game.
Yeah.
So I know you asked me what time it was, and I just told you how to build a clock. But
I love that.
there's the reasoning behind that. It's simply because, and in fact, I firmly believe. So if you go to Twitter right now and you look at a high school senior, a high school junior, and you look at what their skills video, look at a catcher who's trying to get recruited, look at a skills video. You might see 3 or 4 balls being caught, 5, maybe 6 throws to second base, maybe a back pick to one, and then 40 seconds of hitting. And I think there's been a shift in this, Charles, in that the industry, the coaches, the scouts are also really starting to understand that receiving is first and foremost the most important. So I think we're going to see this trickle into even the recruiting videos. I think we'll see, if you've got a 90-second recruiting video and you want to use 30 seconds of that to show your hitting as a catcher, of the remaining minute, I bet you're going to see 80% of that being contributed to receiving, since that is the most important factor. So there you go.
I love the receiving. No, I love the receiving aspect of it, because I think that's something that's overlooked. At least it used to be overlooked. I think it's becoming less overlooked.
Yes.
But it's vital because it's such an important piece of controlling the game. And a lot of times catchers get attributed to being the field general, right? And part of being a general is understanding what gets your team an advantage and being able to get the strikes that are strikes and then steal the outside edges, right? The low parts of the zone, the high parts of the zone, the corners, and doing that well just makes you a better general as far as leading your team, because you're stealing opportunities. So,
I concur 1,000%.
Yeah, I like that.
So
I like that viewpoint.
Well, and I guess there's one other thing I'd like to add. And so I've got a unique perspective in that my daughter, so I've got 3 daughters. One of them's a collegiate softball player. She's a pitcher, but I train catchers. So, but I get to understand these things from 2 different perspectives, from the perspective of a pitcher, but also of a catcher. You can talk to 100, whether it's high school or 16 or 14U, whatever, pitchers. They all have a catcher that they prefer to throw to. And there's a reason for that. Now, whether that catcher catches the ball more cleanly and makes that 60 sound like 70, that could be. Whether they feel more confident in that kid because they know if they let the drop ball go and they have to block it, I know this kid's got my back. So I think if you look at that quality of the catcher, and it's really difficult to quantify this, But I think what you'll find is that when that catcher is doing her job really well, the confidence level in the pitcher rises. So now what we have is we have a really good catcher who's not only doing her job and stealing the strikes, but she's also making the pitcher feel more confident. So she's going to deliver better performance. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
No, it absolutely does.
I love speculating this.
I love that you said that, because honestly, when I played as a pitcher, so I pitched and I played shortstop. And when I was pitching, if a catcher made a bad reception on a ball that I thought was close to the strike zone and I didn't get the call, I wasn't mad at the umpire. I was mad at the catcher, because I was like, dude, you are not helping me at all. So I hated pitching to catchers who couldn't handle my stuff.
Right.
There was always that game where you ended up having the backup catcher come in and you're like, great. Now I've got to
confidence is gone.
Yeah, because I have to throw it. I have to throw it perfectly, because they're not going to be able to receive the ball that's outside their frame. They're not going to be able to stick that low pitch. They're not going to be able to do those certain things. And the same thing applied for me when I was in the infield. If I knew the first baseman was good at picking balls in the dirt, I didn't throw balls in the dirt. It was really weird. But if I knew that first baseman struggled to receive balls in the dirt, I would be thinking I have to be so perfect with my throw that I would throw balls errantly, and then I'd have mistakes because I was trying to be too perfect. And so
you're not playing loose. You're trying to aim. You're trying to be too perfect because of your lack of confidence on the other end.
Right. So I always take a high value in the first baseman or the first base person, because
extremely undervalued position in the big scheme. I agree 1,000%, because they affect everybody else in the infield, right?
I mean, just like a catcher stealing strikes, how many outs can you steal by picking a ball or keeping a ball in front and not giving up an extra base? Those little things go and then again, the confidence piece, I know I can throw it anywhere. This guy's got my back.
Yeah.
So I just let it fly. And more times than not, I'm loose and I'm more accurate. So I like that thought process. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a unique point as far as keeping the game and how it kind of all the mental stuff kind of goes and connects each other, and how it affects your performance. So,
well, I know you've heard this number before. We talked to hitters about this, right? About hitting being 90% mental. Really, the game itself is 90% mental. For the most part, these kids know how to field a ball, get their hands ready, set their feet, and make a throw. All right. That's the physical aspect of the game. Like how many physical errors are made throughout the course of a game or even a season, and compare that to the mental brain farts. Right. My bet, and I haven't done the analysis on this, but I'd be willing to bet that there are more mental brain farts. A runner on first base, a relatively hard hit ball to second base, that hesitation to not get the immediate double play is enough to lose the out at one. You might get the out at two still.
Right.
But if that mental brain fart, now on the topic, on the surface, it looks like, hey, good play, you got the out. The reality is that brain fart cost the second out.
Yeah.
So that mental aspect, this game being 90% mental, I concur 1,000%. That applies to catching, it applies to hitting, it applies to your infielders, right? You mentioned this yourself. As a shortstop, as a third baseman, you felt a lot more comfortable, relaxed, and you could just throw the ball because you knew if you happen to yank it 5 feet to the west, your first baseman's got your back. You throw it in the dirt, he's going to pick it.
Right.
So that mental aspect helped you play freer and relaxed.
Yeah.
So I would be willing to bet you could take that everywhere in the field.
Yeah. So I love that you brought that point up, because this is something that has been on my mind a little bit lately, because a lot of people keep saying, one, how boring it is to watch baseball or softball on TV. Like, now, again, it's a common argument that I have to have with people because they just don't understand the sport. But I think part of that is because it is so mental, and there's so many things that are happening that people who are just casual fans don't see. Do you think there'd be some value if the major leagues, the high level softball, the high level baseball televised broadcasts went away from having commercial breaks, and they did like a little pop-up window in the corner so they could still get their advertisement up there? But during those between inning moments, you had people like me and you talk about this, like the science behind what they just happened, or the pitches movement, or what happened on this play, and breaking it down from a mental and performance aspect, and then going through replays and showing different parts of the game that are mentally intriguing. Do you think that would draw fans back into wanting to watch the game?
I think it would certainly help make fans more educated about the process. And with my experience, when I watch, whether it's a softball game or a baseball game, and I just can't help it, right? It's in my blood. If I see, and I'm not trying to down talk the player by any stretch of imagination, but if I see a player taking 3 steps, whereas it could have taken 2, I just, it's just in my mind, wow, how did that happen? Why did that happen? Or why did this player, choose to field the ball, set their feet instead of throw it on a run? Or why this player try to get the lead runner here instead of just going to one to get the sure out? I can't help myself but do that, whether it's the catchers or pitching calls, pitch locations. I always ask myself, why did this person do this? I'm sure that you do the same thing when you watch a game. You just can't help yourself but looking at it saying, hey, why did this person do that? This doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think if those types of conversations happen, with the color commentary, like you said, during the commercial break, I think that would certainly help educate the casual observer and turn them more into a dedicated or addicted fan.
Right.
I think it absolutely would. And then that would also then take a 13-year-old boy that's watching a college baseball game, right? Instead of just watching the game and enjoying seeing the ball come in and the ball go out, now he's actually learning. And that could help him in his next game or his upcoming trial. So yeah, I think that'd be an amazing idea. I think that'd be really cool.
Right. And then you throw in like the sports science piece of it too, because again, we talked about the athleticism of these girls, and you get a ball off the bat that comes off and they show like the exit velocity was 78 miles an hour on a one hopper to the shortstop to their left. So they had this kind of reaction time to make this play. And all of a sudden now you're like, holy crap, that happened that fast. And then they had to get up and make it like all of a sudden it becomes this like mind blowing like moment. Like I thought it was just a ground ball and they made a good play.
Right.
And now you get to see the science behind it. And so you now highlight this athletic moment because the sport is so much break between action, right? If you think about it, a good game has a small amount of action. It's a lot of
12 minutes,
right?
15
but there's a lot
minutes of actual action.
Right. There's a lot of chess pieces moving. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of things happening that people don't get. And so if you maximize showing of the action by replaying it during commercials and showing why this was so special, and then you also educate on what the chess pieces were, I think all of a sudden now you have people who tune in and pay attention to the whole game because, wow, I'm learning. 2, that was pretty incredible to see that play. And 3, this game isn't as dull as I thought it was. There's a lot of things going on. Yeah. So.
I agree. Have you ever been around a group of boys the first time they see a good quality softball game? Because that is a sight to see, because for the most part, and I'm going to stereotype and I'm probably going to get chastised for this, but most of my encounters, and I'm talking about through my involvement here, through my involvement at the schools, most of the time, baseball players, it's all baseball to them. And they think, oh, that's, it's powder puff, it's kitten ball, whatever. But when they see that happen for the first time, and just like you said, even without the sports science people saying, hey, that ball was hit 75 miles an hour, she had 0.2 seconds to make up her mind, get out there, field the ball. And now this runner's 2.8 from home. So she's got absolutely 0 time to make an error and make this throw. Even without that happening, when they see how quick and how athletic these girls have to be, I think it becomes an eye opener for them to realize, man, these girls can really play this game.
So I'm lucky. So I came at Pick Central, right? I came from coaching baseball and I switched to coaching softball. But the really cool thing about it was the coach that I left from the baseball side, Ray Noe, was very big about the 2 teams being on, what's the good word? Good terms with each other as far as appreciating what they do. So when they didn't have games, he would send and tell players, hey, go check these girls out. They're pretty special.
Awesome.
So we actually, and because I was coming from baseball there, they'd all come and be like, well, I wonder why he left. What's going on over here? What's all this about? So my 2 years where I was doing softball, we actually had pretty decent baseball player turnout to watch games. And afterwards, they were always like, dude, some of your girls are freaking awesome. Like, and the teams that we had when I was there.
Yeah, and Pick Central's put on a really good team.
Right.
My knowledge of it the last 5 years, it's been
yeah,
really, really good.
And we had some hitters, and we've got some girls who were just incredible athletes. And I mean, so they'd come and they'd see 3-4 home runs in a game, and they'd come and they'd see some nice, pitching and defense, and they're like, oh, this is some high level softball. And again, I think there was always room for improvement with the high school game, because you're not going to get the same quality as you do at some of the really high level travel ball stuff.
Sure.
But I mean, again, when you get two really good programs at the high school level going at it, you get to see some pretty good balls in Ohio, at least. I don't know how it is in all the states, but I think we got some pretty talented programs that do a good job of putting out high level softball teams on a regular basis.
100%. Yeah. And it seems like, we're just now getting into the 2021 season, right? So we're knocking off 2 years of rust, but it seems like the quality is getting even better, that the girls are getting stronger. They're getting faster. The pitchers are getting more snap and spin. The hitters are getting stronger. This is going to be a really, really fun year to watch, certainly in Central Ohio, to watch high school softball, because there's a lot of really good teams around here right now.
Yeah. No,
it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun season.
I think it'll be fun too, because a lot of them are going to be young when it comes to varsity experience, because so many girls left after last year without having played a season. So if you think about it, the girls who get to play with varsity experience were either freshmen or sophomores,
right,
playing, right? Because now you're looking at it and they're like, well, I didn't get to play a whole lot.
and they were upper class. Now they're upper class.
Right. They're junior seniors. Right. Yeah. So there's going to be an interesting, I wonder how it'll progress with some of these teams as far as developing over the course of the season, because you may have some teams that start slow because of that lack of experience, but then that talent will start to kind of catch up, and then you'll see them peak at the right time. And you might have it might be the year of the upset in the tournament. I'm not going to call any upsets right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see a couple teams come in with like 500 or just below 500 records and then knock off like a 2, 3, 4 seed. And you're like, wait a minute, what just happened? Because it take a while to get going. So what I want to dive into next is, obviously you coach a lot of kids. You've worked with a lot of kids. We talked about this when we had that conversation on the phone on your drive down to South Carolina, but when you look at the high school kid, what are some of the things that makes the difference between the kid who becomes just an average to good high school player and then ends up making that transition to becoming something more and getting a chance to play at the college level?
Wow. Yeah, you're right. I enjoyed that conversation when we spoke about this on the phone. And this is a great lead into some other conversations that you've got going on right now, is, what chromosome is it that exists in this kid? It's that kid that doesn't need to be told to go do something to make herself better or make himself better. And being here at Field of Dreams 5-6 days per week, I see that a lot. I see kids that come in and, either mom or dad drop them off, or they're here, but mom's, sitting on her iPad chatting with some of the other parents. And the kid is, not just hitting 100 balls off the tee, but she's moving the tee around, to actually have a purposeful hitting workout. And then if she's got somebody throwing live to her, she's not just going in for the sake of quantity and just taking 50 hacks. She's trying to make that as close to a real game workout as possible. So she's being smart. She's working on taking the pitches that are, not the ones that she should be swinging at. She's doing in here what she would be doing out there. And when I see that happen on their own, now I don't know the conversation back at the house 20 minutes before they got here, if mom's saying, come on, you got to go, that I don't know. But I don't think so. I think those are the kids that want to be here. The ones that are forced to be here are the ones that come in and they come in and they'll do the minimum, or they'll have their lesson. They take no warm-ups beforehand. They don't stretch. They don't do any J-band work. And they just come in because mom or dad paid for them to have a lesson. So that the short answer, even though I gave you a long answer, but the shorter answer is the kid that wants it it comes from within.
Mm-hmm.
She's not being told by her coach or her instructor or mom or dad to go get after it. She wants to get after it because she understands somebody else on her team is doing that. And if she doesn't, she's going to get left behind. Yeah. Or the girl that plays for some small school in Southeast Michigan is getting after it. And those two are competing for a roster on Joe Abraham's team up at Toledo. So they just, and when you see those kids, oh, it's a joy to watch. It's so, and I know you see them at your place. Mm-hmm. It's so much fun. You can just sit back, and if you've got like an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old that's just starting to get into it, you tell them, just sit here, just watch this kid. Just watch what she does. You know, is anybody telling her to move the ball around the plate, start working down in or low and away, or the rise ball pitches? No, she's going through this process on her own. And so now what you have is you have that kid who is putting in that work, but she also becomes a role model. Whether she knows it or not, she becomes a role model. So now she's affecting other kids. Now she's the teacher by her example. And it's amazing to watch. And I see quite a bit of it here. My God, is it a joy to see?
Yeah. No, I like the idea of coaching or working with purpose, of training with purpose, because I think that's the value of it. It's not just coming in to get reps. It's not just coming in to swing for swinging's sake or to throw for throwing's sake. You're having a game plan to what you're trying to achieve. And for me personally, I get a huge joy out of when I'm watching a kid do like T work or some type of drill. And as they're going through the drill, all of a sudden you see them stop before they take a swing. Like something didn't feel right while they were going through that process. And they go, wait, and you see them reset. And you know, in that moment that they're legitimately thinking about what they're trying to accomplish, and they didn't like the way it felt. So they reset themselves and they do it again. And that's like kind of what you're saying, is where you watch them go through these things and you see that, you can almost see the thought bubbles.
Yeah. Like you can see the gears turning.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So when those kids come in, the ones that are intrinsically motivated, like you're talking about, that come in and they have a plan and they have a purpose, are those also the kids that aren't afraid to come up and pick your brain and ask you questions, that like when they see something going on, they go, ooh, that looked interesting. Why are you doing that? What's that all about?
Yes. And those are the ones that, and they're here. So now me, and I'm just talking about myself personally as an instructor. I'm not one that's short on words. I say it all the time to my kids that I'm not training them to be a catcher, that I'm training them to be the next generation's catching instructor. They get to play the game until they're old enough to start taking on their own stable of kids. So because of that, I spent a lot of time in the brain. We talk a lot throughout the lesson where I'm making sure, like you said, this kid that was working on his own game plan, something didn't feel right. So in his head, he knew what it was supposed to feel like, what his hands were supposed to do, how the barrel was supposed to drop in a slot or whatever. And that's because in his head, he knew what that's supposed to feel like. So I spent a lot of time with my students making sure that they know what they're supposed to do. And I explained it to them like this, you know, you're going to spend a lot more time working on this on your own away from me. So you need to have this ability, this skill to police yourself, whether you set up a camera and you kind of critique your own swing, or you're, you know, receiving balls off a pitching machine and you're grading your own receiving work. They're going to spend a lot more time between practices and at home throwing with mom or dad or with the brother than they are here with me. And I can't be there for those moments. So they have to have that. But those are the same kids that when I'm talking to other students, they're hearing me. And those are the ones that, yes, in between lessons or before they start or afterward, you know, it may be something I haven't worked with them, but the one kid I'll talk about specifically is a pitcher. And I know that she has heard me many, many times working with catchers. So she was asking me why I do this, why I do that. And then once she understood the process, again, you can see those thought bubbles. She's now processing how that can help her in her role as a pitcher, knowing that somebody's grinding out the hours working with her catcher. Now that's going to help her look better as a pitcher. So yeah, they do ask the questions. They are curious, and they're thirsty for that knowledge, whether that applies to them in their specific position or they can make that leap in logic, how that can apply to them and make their team better, because they're hearing what this catcher's doing and what this hitter's doing. So yeah, they are the ones that are always inquisitive.
I love that. And there's a couple of things that you said in there that I really enjoyed. And first was the idea of being able to take what they do and apply it when they work on their own, because I think a lot of times kids think that, well, I did my half-hour hitting this week and I did this and I did that, and that's enough. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, in a sport like baseball and softball, there's no amount that's enough. So there's always more. We thought you did good. Okay, you need to do more. There's always going to be more to be done, because there's so many pieces that go into being successful, that even if you worked till your hands are bleeding and you can't swing anymore, there's other things you can work on, from the mental game, from understanding how your approach works, and all of these things that if you really want to be good at it, there should be a constant level of effort working on. Right.
I concur 1,000,000%. There's an analogy that I use, and I came up with this on my own. I should service mark this, but I explain it to the kids like this. I say, listen, I am a piano instructor, just metaphorically. I'm a piano instructor. I can teach you how to play the chords, how to move your hands up and down the keyboards. But right now, if we just work on this when it's you and me, all that is a bunch of noise. If you apply that at home and practice at home on your own without being told, that noise turns into music. I'm not teaching you music. I'm teaching you how to do this. It's the practice doing that that's going to make the music happen.
I love that.
And they get that.
No, I love that. Yeah, because I could bang on a keyboard and make a bunch of sounds, but it's not going to sound like Beethoven's symphony. That's for sure.
No, it's not.
So the other piece that I loved about the conversation you had is that a pitcher came and asked you about a catching concept. So with that in mind, have you ever had a pitcher watch a hitting lesson for a way to attack a batter and understanding how their mechanics work and work backwards from that perspective? Like if you see obviously as a hitting instructor, you see a hitter who gets extended, they're going to have trouble hitting the inside pitch, right? They're getting long inside, we'll jam them. They're never going to get their hands inside. They're never going to make good barrel contact unless you throw maybe an off speed and they actually catch up somehow. Have you ever had a pitcher look at that same thing and go, oh, this swing's long, I'm going inside, I'm jamming them. Or this swing is quick and ripping out, so I'm going off speed away.
I'm going to move to the other side of that pitch path, not the pitchers, the catchers. Okay. I have had those conversations with catchers about generating this awareness of hitter. Where's this hitter standing? Are we, are we dropping hands? Are we casting? Are we reaching? All these flaws that you try to break when you're working with hitters. We're also trying to be smart enough to pick up on those when we're behind the dish. Now, we're not going to get to see it as well as maybe you can if you're looking at a camera, because you're also watching the ball come in and you got 100,000 things going through your brain, but they can tell the swing path. They can tell the hand path. They can see what's going on with the barrel through the zone. So I haven't had that conversation with pitchers as much as I have with catchers. And yes, we talk about that a lot. We talk, because again, if we just go back to this conversation we had earlier about the catcher, one of her jobs being a coach, she may be seeing from her perspective that this batter is dropping her hands and the barrel's coming low through the zone on everything, and she's missing everything underneath. If the coach calls for a drop ball, we are now serving this pitch up right into this batter's strengths. Right. And if the catcher's aware of this, because she's been watching these workouts or paying attention to the batter, now she can now help prevent that one situation where we just put a pitch right where the batter can only hit it. So yeah, we do have that conversation as catchers. I can't say I have with pitchers, but that would be a good conversation. I'm sure that they do with the pitching instructor down on the other side of the room. I'm not allowed down there because I'm too loud. I have to be back in my corner because I'm too vocal.
But see, I think that'd be an interesting thing to see, like, especially like, for example, obviously you get scouting reports at the college game, but if you were as a pitcher yourself, if you're watching the game, in the college game, let's say you're the day 2 starter in a series, you get a chance to watch the whole team hit the day before. Imagine how much information you could gather if you knew what you were looking for, to then go out the next day and be like, all right, I know you can't hit this, and I know you struggle with that, and I know this is your weakness, and okay, you're a really good hitter, so I got to make sure I hit my spots with you. And having that understanding of the swing and watching and paying attention could just give you such an advantage, in my opinion.
Well, you know what, you might have just fallen into something, or maybe you've thought about this for long. Excuse me. So I've seen hundreds, thousands of both softball pitching lessons, and they work on the mechanics, they work on the stride, the grip, the finish, follow through, balance, all that stuff. But I can honestly say, I don't think I've ever actually heard or observed the conversation, whether it's, with my own daughter going to her lessons or listening to other coaches work with their kids at the field, or even here. I can honestly say, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody having that type of conversation specifically, but that right there kind of falls in line. I just put a post on Facebook on one of those national Facebook groups just recently, urging, pleading the coaches to spend some time to teach the kids some of the most important rules of the game.
Yeah.
Obviously we know we get 3 outs, 4 balls, 3 strikes, blah, blah. But do these kids understand? I mean, they're in high school. Do they understand what the infield fly rule is and how that affects them when they're base running or on defense? Or do they understand the drop third strike situation as a base runner? What does that mean? As a batter, what does that mean? As a catcher, what does that mean? Right. So along those lines, that very well could be like a nice little YouTube video for you to produce, because if we think of the thousands and thousands of kids that are out there playing the game and how many hundreds of coaches that equates to, go down to the grassroots level, go down to the rec level or little league, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the coaches that are starving for the information. Who's doing this? Is it the ex-college player who wants to work his way up through coaching? No, it's the mom or dad who volunteered. Yeah. And may have a little bit of experience. So I think you're onto something right there. And I think that would be a very, very heavily watched and shared video if you brought a pitcher in and showed some video from behind the pitcher, maybe the catcher's perspective, keyed in on batter tendencies, and because watching a college game, you can't hear what the pitcher's thinking. But now you can catch the audio of the conversation between the coach right there and the pitcher saying, are you seeing this? Why do we not want to go here? Why do we want to choose this pitch? Why do we want to wave this pitch up? I think that's an awesome video.
Yeah. I think that might be something to do next winter when they come home and do their live throwing to the hitters.
Yes, that would be
we'll just set it up and go and just talk about it.
Record that, and you're talking 100,000 views. I guarantee you that would go viral nationwide. That would be shared from player to parent to coach. That'd be a great video.
Awesome. Yeah, love to see it. That'll be something I'm working on next winter now. I got that in my mind. So, the truth is, here we could probably talk all day because we both love this game. We both love sports. So what I want to do now is I want to give you a chance to plug where my listeners can follow you, where they can check out what you're doing, how they can get a hold of you, whatever information you want to give for them to connect with you. I want you to put that out there for me, and I'm going to share that through the show notes and things like that as we go forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So Field of Dreams is an indoor training facility. We're located in Lancaster. We've got an 8,000 square foot facility. Our core business is training. We do have space for teams to come get their off-season work in, during the winter, rainy days, whatever. But that's not our core focus. Is one-on-one instruction. We do offer various leagues, live hitting, et cetera, throughout the fall and the winter leading up to the season. We've got instructors for all aspects of the game, from catching to pitching to hitting. And we've actually spent quite a bit of time here in the last couple of months working with kids on their fielding and throwing techniques, whether they're middle infielder, corner, or even outfielder. So how you get a hold of us, we have a Facebook page, of course, Field of Dreams, Ohio. And on there, if you click the Book Now button, that will take you to a separate set of software that allows you to peruse through all the types of lessons and instructors we have. If you click on that instructor, you'll see that instructor's availability. You can then book your lesson. Lessons are 30 minutes private, one-on-one. We have done and do offer some group situations, but we got to be careful with that. I don't want to just say, hey, give me 3 catchers for this 30 minutes, because I can literally get lost in this one kid and the other 2 are not getting any attention. But that type of stuff can be worked out. So we do have a Facebook page. We're located at 731 Slocum Street in Lancaster. across the street and just south of the Hocking Valley Gymnastics facility. So many parents understand where that is. And if you don't, look for the Dairy Queen. We're right by the Dairy Queen on the west side of Lancaster. And We've been here since 2013. Oh my God, it's been 8 years.
Yeah, no, right? That's crazy.
It's a blur. And our phone number is 740-653-3463. If you want to reach out to us via email or you have a simple question, you can, of course, message us through our Facebook page, or you can email fieldofdreams2013 at att.net, and we will get back to that as soon as possible.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure I put all that in the show notes so people can reach out and connect with you, follow along with what you guys are doing. I think you guys are doing an amazing job over there. It's been fun watching that grow and develop and do some big things there. So until next time, guys, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face. But remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and join us again next time as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But no matter what happens, remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We are all on the edge of greatness.